Chosen one. Have you ever felt deep within your spirit that your life doesn't fit into the ordinary pattern? Like you've been walking through seasons that make no sense, yet something inside keeps whispering. You were chosen for something eternal. There's a reason for that. Because before the wars of the end were ever seen by human eyes, before nations rose and fell, before time even began counting itself, your name was written in the eternal scroll of God's remembrance. There weren't many names written there. Only a few. Not because God didn't love the world, but because few were willing to carry the kind of power, purity, and endurance that the last hour would require. You, chosen one, were counted among them. You are not random. You are not a leftover soul drifting in these chaotic times. You are one of the end-time warriors, those marked with heaven's seal, destined to stand when others fall, to fight when others bow, and to shine when darkness covers the earth. But before you could be trusted with that mantle, your spirit had to be trained in silence. Your life had to go through the fire. Your soul had to be broken, not to destroy you, but to refine you into a vessel of divine warfare. You weren't just selected, you were counted. Meaning, heaven looked across the ages, searched through the hearts of billions, and said, "This one will endure. This one will still worship when the world collapses. This one will not trade their faith for comfort." And that's you. You were marked when no one saw. You were chosen when no one applauded. You were counted when you didn't even count yourself worthy. This isn't a fairy tale, chosen one. It's a heavenly record. A mystery the world cannot see, but your spirit can feel it every time you pray, every time you battle unseen storms, every time you wake up and sense that your existence has eternal weight. Today, we're going to go deep into what it means to be counted among the end-time warriors, and by the time you finish this message, your heart will remember who you truly are. You see, heaven never sends soldiers without identity. Before every major move of God, there's always a secret choosing. In ancient times, when Gideon gathered his army, God reduced his soldiers from 32,000 to 300. Why? Because he doesn't count by numbers, he counts by hearts. And that same principle has returned for the end times. The Spirit of God has once again walked through humanity, testing motives, weighing hearts, watching who would bow to fear and who would stand in faith. Those who survived the testing were not the loudest. They were not the most celebrated. They were the ones who, in the quiet of the night, still whispered, "Yes, Lord, even if no one understands me." That's who you are. The world sees an ordinary person. But in the scroll of heaven, your name glows with a specific seal, the seal of the end-time warrior. This seal doesn't make you better than others. It simply means you accepted a weight that few could bear. Because this assignment is not glamorous. It's hidden. It's painful. It demands obedience when you feel forgotten. It requires you to love when hatred surrounds you. Many wanted power. Few wanted process. And that's where heaven drew the line. Those few, whose hearts refused to quit, were the ones counted. And when the names were written, yours was among them. The scroll of remembrance in the book of Malachi says, "Then they that feared the Lord spoke often one to another, and the Lord listened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name." That book still exists. And your name is there. You may have wondered why you've faced so many spiritual attacks. Why every season seems to pull you through fire after fire. Because those who are counted are not protected from battle. They are prepared for battle. You were not called to avoid war. You were designed to win it. Chosen one. If you're hearing this message right now, there's a reason. Because only those who have walked through certain kinds of fire, certain kinds of pain, certain kinds of silence, will truly recognize what I'm about to describe. Heaven doesn't mark the chosen with crowns first, it marks them with patterns. Patterns that repeat in your life, patterns that look random to others but are perfectly designed by God to shape you for the final hour. When you are counted among the end-time warriors, your life carries fingerprints of divine preparation. It's not something you read about, it's something your soul remembers. And once you see the signs, you'll understand that nothing you've gone through was accidental. Let's unfold these signs together. Listen carefully, your heart will recognize them. You've probably noticed it your entire life, this quiet unease that sits inside your spirit. Even when things seem fine on the surface, something deep inside whispers, "This isn't it. There's more." You've tried to settle, you've tried to blend in, you've even tried to convince yourself that a normal life should be enough, but it never fits. That's because your spirit was not wired for the temporary. You were designed for eternal purpose. There's a stirring in you that doesn't go away, because your assignment hasn't been completed yet. You can feel the pull of heaven even in the middle of worldly noise. You sense that something is coming, not fear, but a holy alertness, like a watchman who knows dawn is near. The world may call it anxiety, but in truth, it's a divine restlessness. A spiritual radar that keeps your heart awake while others sleep. You can't sit still while injustice grows. You can't ignore spiritual decay. You can't live numb, because your soul was trained to respond to heaven's heartbeat. That restlessness is not your enemy, it's your evidence. You've been counted among those who can still feel the Spirit moving. And God trusts you to keep your sensitivity alive until the trumpet sounds. Chosen one, if there's one sign that screams you were counted, it's isolation. There were seasons where it felt like God unplugged you from everyone. Friendships faded. Relationships dried up. Doors that made sense suddenly closed, and you couldn't understand why. You prayed for community but found yourself in silence. You looked for help but heaven said, "Not yet." What you didn't realize is that you were in kingdom quarantine. Not because something was wrong with you, but because heaven was preparing you to carry something sacred, something that required privacy before exposure. Every warrior goes through a wilderness before a war. Every prophet is hidden before they're heard. So if you've walked through years of feeling misunderstood, unseen, and set apart, don't despise that season. It was never rejection, it was refinement. You weren't being left behind, you were being lifted away from distractions that would have polluted your calling. God didn't want your voice to sound like the crowd. He wanted your voice to sound like heaven. Your loneliness was your training ground. It was there you learned to hear Him clearly, to depend on His presence more than people, to let His whispers become your compass. And when that time comes for you to rise, your authority will carry the fragrance of those silent years. This one might sting, because you've lived it. Have you ever wondered why the intensity of your battles doesn't match your current situation? Why the opposition feels too personal, too relentless, too strange? It's because the war against you didn't start when you were born. It started when your name was written. The enemy saw your potential before you even took your first breath. And every trap, every betrayal, every cycle of spiritual exhaustion, it was all targeted warfare designed to stop your awakening. You are not under attack because you're weak. You're under attack because you're effective. The devil doesn't waste ammunition on the lukewarm. He aims for the ones carrying spiritual clearance, those who have access to heaven's plans. Every storm that hit you was hell's attempt to break the line of communication between you and God. But you're still here. You still pray. You still believe. You still worship through the wounds. That's what makes you terrifying to the kingdom of darkness, your endurance. And here's the mystery. The more warfare you survive, the higher your rank becomes. Because every battle you win in secret echoes in the spiritual realm, and your name gets engraved deeper into the roll of heaven's warriors. So when you feel waves of resistance for no reason, don't panic. It's not random, it's recognition. Hell attacks what heaven has already acknowledged. There are moments when you kneel to pray and what flows out of your mouth doesn't sound like your own words. Tears fall, but the Spirit starts speaking through you, giving instructions, declaring things, sensing future movements before they manifest. That's not imagination. That's intel. You see, when God counts you among His warriors, your prayer life becomes a communication line with command headquarters. You're not praying for comfort, you're praying for clarity. Sometimes you'll wake up in the night with an urgency to pray for someone, and later discover that moment shifted something you never saw. That's because intercession is warfare in disguise. You may not wear armor physically, but your prayers do. Every whisper in the Spirit carries weight in unseen places. When others gossip, you intercede. When others panic, you strategize in prayer. You are not just asking God for help, you are partnering with Him to execute divine orders. That's how heaven's warriors operate. They don't move by emotion, they move by revelation. You'll find that sometimes, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" your spirit will say, "God, what are you showing me?" Because you've learned that prayer is not just therapy, it's territory. Every time you pray, heaven moves. End-time warriors are trained in dimensions most people ignore. While the world reacts to what's visible, you've been conditioned to discern what's invisible. You can feel atmospheres. You can sense tension before words are spoken. You can walk into a place and immediately pick up on spiritual heaviness or peace. That's not a curse, that's spiritual radar. God made you sensitive not to overwhelm you, but to position you. Because the battles of the end times are not physical, they're spiritual, psychological, and atmospheric. You've been through seasons where you had to fight depression that wasn't even yours, fear that came out of nowhere, chaos that seemed to enter rooms when certain people walked in. That's because you're a carrier of spiritual balance. When light enters a dark space, the darkness always reacts. Don't mistake your sensitivity for weakness. It's your weapon. God has trained your discernment like a soldier's instinct. You know when to speak and when to stay silent. You sense when something isn't pure, even if it looks holy. You are the kind of warrior heaven can trust to recognize spiritual imposters. You can detect the counterfeit before it spreads. That's why your discernment had to be sharpened through pain. Because sensitivity without maturity can destroy, but sensitivity with humility can save nations. This is the greatest sign of all. If you've truly been counted among heaven's warriors, you'll notice your heart has changed. You love in ways that don't make sense to the flesh. You forgive when others hold grudges. You intercede for those who hurt you. You cry over souls who mock you. That's not weakness, that's divine warfare. Love is the final weapon. And the closer you walk with God, the more your love becomes dangerous to darkness. The enemy can handle your talent, your anointing, even your preaching, but he can't handle your love. Because love disarms him completely. Every time you choose to bless those who curse you, the enemy loses ground. Every time you love without agenda, heaven expands through you. That's how you know you're counted. Your heart has become a reflection of God's heart. You've been through pain that should have made you bitter, but instead, it made you compassionate. You've carried burdens that should have made you cold, but instead, they made you kind. Because somewhere along the line, your spirit decided, I won't fight hate with hate. I'll fight it with heaven. And that's what the end-time army looks like, not angry warriors, but loving ones. Not those who destroy flesh, but those who deliver souls. You are not just a soldier, you are a carrier of divine empathy. A walking sanctuary. A voice that heals even when you don't realize it. This is something you've probably never said out loud, but it's real. There are moments you feel like you remember something you've never seen, like a place that feels familiar, a purity that feels ancient. You long for heaven in ways you can't describe. You feel homesick for a world you've never visited. That's because your spirit remembers. You were present in the counsel of God before you came to earth. You said yes to your assignment before your birth. And when you hear certain messages or encounter God's presence deeply, something in you awakens, like a soldier hearing the sound of home. You are not just a believer, you are a returner. A soul that came back to finish something started long ago. That deep nostalgia, that yearning for holiness, that ache to see righteousness win, that's not fantasy. It's memory. The memory of the promise you made before time began. That's why compromise never sits right with you. Why spiritual mediocrity suffocates you. Because you were born with the DNA of an ancient oath, an oath to stand when others fall, to shine when darkness thickens, to love when hatred reigns. Most people see brokenness as weakness, but heaven sees it as access. If you've ever been through a heartbreak that shattered your identity, a loss that almost erased your faith, and somehow, through that pain, you came out more compassionate, more prayerful, more surrendered, that's a sign. Because God only entrusts deep pain to those He intends to use deeply. You've been broken, not to destroy you, but to make you transparent enough for His light to shine through. Your scars have become sermons. Your tears have become testimonies. You've learned to worship from the ashes, and that's what makes your worship weighty. You're not praising God for what He's done, you're praising Him for who He still is, even when everything else changed. Only end-time warriors carry that kind of maturity, to keep faith alive when nothing makes sense. Sometimes you'll speak simple words, and things shift. You'll pray for someone casually, and peace enters their life. You'll declare something in faith, and circumstances rearrange. You don't always notice it, but heaven does. Because authority isn't noise, it's recognition. When you were counted, heaven assigned weight to your words. Not because of status, but because of surrender. You became trustworthy. That's why your presence changes atmospheres. You don't need to shout to move mountains, your obedience already does. And in this last hour, heaven is awakening that authority in you again. You're being reminded, you are not powerless. You are a vessel of divine decree. When you speak, creation listens. The final sign, and perhaps the most obvious, is this growing inner urgency. You can feel it. Time feels different now. You sense the acceleration of destiny, the quickening of spiritual time. It's like your soul is saying, something's coming, and I must be ready. That's because the scroll is unrolling. Prophecies are aligning. Heaven is mobilizing its end-time army, and your spirit knows it. You can't ignore the call anymore. You can't numb it with distractions. Because your assignment is awakening again. The sound of heaven is calling your name. And every fiber of your being knows, this is not the hour to hide. This is the hour to rise. Chosen one. If these signs have echoed in your spirit, it's because your name was written among the few. You didn't imagine your pain. You didn't imagine your isolation. You didn't imagine your fire. You were being forged, refined, tested, and prepared to stand as one of heaven's last day soldiers. You are not just living through the end times, you are part of God's response to them. That's why you're still here. Because heaven counted you trustworthy. Before heaven ever gives you a sword, it gives you scars. That's how heaven trains its warriors. Every heartbreak was a classroom. Every delay was a lesson in patience. Every betrayal was a test of loyalty to God. You see, earthly soldiers train on fields of dirt, but spiritual warriors train in the unseen arenas of pain. Your tears were not wasted. They were baptisms into power. There were nights you wanted to give up. You told God, I can't keep going. And yet, something invisible lifted you again. That was the Spirit saying, you don't even know how strong you've become. You didn't realize that every time you forgave instead of fighting back, your spiritual ranking increased. Every time you chose humility instead of pride, your sword got sharper. Every time you praised God in silence, angels took note and heaven recorded your endurance. End-time warriors are not made in crowds, they are made in caves. And that's why you had to be hidden. Not because God was ignoring you, but because He was guarding His weapon. You are that weapon. He didn't want your strength diluted by applause or pride. He wanted your obedience to become your power. Now your spirit carries a maturity that can't be faked. When you walk into spiritual atmospheres, the unseen realm recognizes you. Demons know who you are. Angels salute your endurance. You don't need a platform to have authority. Your scars already speak your credentials. Chosen one, you were not counted to simply survive. You were counted to command. To represent heaven's heart in the last hour. There are people who will only know God through you. There are lives hanging in the balance, waiting for the sound of your obedience. This is not about fame. It's about function. Your spirit carries clearance in this generation. That's why you feel such urgency. It's why time feels short. It's why heaven keeps pressing on your heart to rise, to speak, to move. You're part of a divine army heaven is quietly positioning, prophets, intercessors, creators, healers, reformers. All hidden, all scattered across the world, but all united by one spirit. The final chapters of time are being written, and your name is not in the footnotes, it's in the lineup. When heaven calls roll, you'll hear your name echo. You'll know that the pain was worth it. You'll realize that your entire life was divine preparation for one great release of light before the end. That's why you couldn't fit in. That's why you couldn't settle for mediocrity. Because your spirit came from a different order, a kingdom warrior order sealed by eternity. You were counted. Few names were written. But yours was not forgotten. As we close this message, pause for a moment and breathe. Feel that quiet fire within your chest. That's not emotion. That's remembrance. Your spirit remembers. It remembers the covenant you made with God before you were born. It remembers the moment heaven whispered your name among the few. You might be tired, but you are not empty. You might feel alone, but heaven has surrounded you with unseen forces. You are not fighting for victory, you're fighting from victory. Your place is not on the sidelines. You were written into the strategy of God's end-time plan. So rise again, warrior. Wipe your tears. Pick up your spiritual armor. Because when the final trumpet sounds, your name will not be missing. You will stand among the few, those who endured, those who fought, those who stayed faithful. And the king will look at you and say, "Well done, my faithful warrior. You were counted among the few." Please like this video. And you can support the channel through the link in the channel's bio. Even your $1 is very precious for me and this channel. Your kindness helps us continue spreading light and love. God bless you.